We're now recording.
Right. Let's see here. I've got the participants over here, attendees. We've got 3 waiting. Great.
And then I'm gonna make them all be allowed to talk, John, or no?
No,
Okay,
we want people to communicate through the
Sure.
Q&A panel.
okay.
Okay, we've got 2 p.m. Do you want to go ahead and we can go ahead and get started?
Yes, let's kick it off. All right, good afternoon, everyone. We're going to begin our SpiderSecure Town Hall, cyber harassment. And we're going to start with just a content warning. Some points of conversation may include sensitive subjects. And additionally, this webinar is being recorded. So if you don't want to be recorded, feel free to step out. All right, we're going to start with our icebreaker. We're going to play a little Kahoot game. And just to kind of see what your thoughts are on the questions. All right, so just go to the website. You can see it. You can scan it as well, and it'll take you right to the Kahoot site, and then the game pin.
Yeah, let's give everybody just a minute to join in.
There we go.
Let's go ahead and kick this off.
Awesome. $20 seconds for each question.
What is the best way to protect yourself against cyber harassment?
Nice.
Oh, good results.
All right, next. Oh, let's see, the scoreboard. Okay.
Yeah, there we go.
What is the definition? Oh, sorry.
What is the definition of cyberstalking? Sorry, I figured I would read the questions, Bella, since you were managing the screen.
Okay, sounds perfect. All right. Keyword is harassing or stalking. Okay. Next. Ooh.
What would be the best resource or resources to report to if you experience cyber harassment? Have you or someone you know experienced cyber harassment? Interesting results.
All right. Congrats,
Congrats, John R.
Kaylin. And who we get number one?
Congrats, Kaylin. And Kristen, congrats.
So hopefully we got you guys in the mindset for what we're about to cover today in today's webinar. Next, we're going to introduce the speakers for this town hall. And I'm going to have John do the introduction, start the introductions off.
Great. Thank you, Svetla. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is John Kraft, and I am the Director of Information Security here at the University of Richmond. We have a great expert panel lined up for today's virtual town hall on cyber harassment, and I hope that this will be both interesting and informative, and that you can walk away armed with some knowledge that can help you guard yourself and maybe some others against cyber harassment. A couple of administrative items first. This town hall, as Svetla said before, is being recorded, and we will be placing this on the UR Information Security website after completion. Also, I would ask all attendees to please post any questions or comments you have in the Q&A panel of the webinar, and we will field those after the presentation. Now I'm going to call on each panel member to introduce themselves, and then we'll get things started. So I'll go to you first, Kaylin.
Thanks, John. Hi, my name is Kaylin Tingle. I use they, them pronouns. I'm the Healthy Relationships and Violence Prevention Educator. I work in the CARE, the Center for Awareness, Response, and Education, which is in health promotion and the Health and Wellbeing Unit. So I oversee our violence prevention programming related to bystander intervention, consent, healthy relationships, sexual assault, intimate partner violence, and stalking awareness. And also work with some of our confidential resources that I'll touch on a little bit later in our webinar.
Thanks, Kaylin. Chris, you next.
Thanks, John. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Chris Henderson. I am the Director of Compliance and the Title IX Coordinator here on campus. My office is located in Fountain Hall. I handle all things compliance as well as Title IX or sexual misconduct cases and reports.
Thanks very much, Chris. Next is Major Eric Beatty.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Eric Beatty. I'm a major with the campus police department here on campus. I've worked investigations now for supervised investigations for almost 10 years and seen a lot of this harassment going on. So I hope I can add something to it today.
Thanks, Eric. And Stella.
Hey, everyone. My name is Svetla Walsh. I'm an information security analyst with the Information Service Security Team.
Thank you, panelists. I really appreciate this. So I'm excited that you are all able to join us to engage on this very important topic of cyber harassment. This is an issue that, according to a 2021 Pew Research study, impacts more than 1 in 3 U.S. adults. And on university campuses, it's not an exception. Several studies have shown that nearly 3 in 5 undergraduate students report that they have been impacted by some form of cyber harassment during the course of their studies. Why are we seeing this? Well, there could be many factors, but most people attribute it to the proliferation of social media platforms, as well as the anonymous nature of the internet. It stands to reason that a cyber harasser will be emboldened to take actions and make statements that they normally would not do if they were doing this face-to-face with someone else. Cyber harassment can take many forms. But it's typically considered to be the use of technology to gain power over someone by using fear or intimidation. This could be a harasser following someone across one or several social media platforms to make threatening or derogatory posts or comments. It could be someone taking out of context statements or private images or movies of you and sharing them without your permission. It could even be someone stalking you through digital applications to track your activities and identify when there might be a good opportunity to confront you in person when you may be alone. So think about all of the information someone can find out about someone else who frequently post their activities on platforms such as Instagram or Facebook. I'm sure we all know someone who documents their lives on social media. All of these are concerning scenarios that could potentially lead to reputational, mental, or even at worst case, physical harm for the victim of a cyber harasser. But the good news is that there are resources and best practices available to help you protect yourself from a cyber harasser. I'm going to turn the presentation over to Svella Walsh to go over some of those tools that are available to you. Svella, take it away.
Awesome. Thank you, John. So we're going to go into best practices. Just like John mentioned, 1 out of 3 have, at least in campuses, have experienced cyber harassment. So these recommended best practices hopefully will help deal with cyber harassment. So first is always report. We recommend you, even if you don't think it's a big deal, to report it. This is a way for us to document something before it gets worse. Later on in this presentation, we're going to actually share some reporting resources here at UR. Next is control your online content. Once you post something, it's really hard to delete it. And we want you to know that someone can take a screenshot of it, and even if you get rid of it, that it's still floating around. Next is don't share your location. Just as if you were at a public event, you wouldn't really tell a new person you just met, or when you're encountering strangers, what your home address is. So applying that same mindset while you're online, don't let people know, share what you're up to, but don't share the exact details. It will just minimize the chance of the wrong people being able to access you or know where you're at. And then on that same touch point, never share private information. Your personal identifying information can be used to access your account. So just understand that what you're sharing, it should be general enough that's not going to be able to be used if somebody was trying to get access to sensitive information about you online. Next is review and update your data privacy settings. This is a way for you to control who sees what you're sharing. So you can, if you just want your friends and family to see what you're up to, your apps should allow you to say, hey, I only want these people to see what I'm doing. And this is another way to minimize the wrong people to have access to you in your online space. Next, we're going to say use strong passwords. This is important when it comes to just like your online accounts. Just as we wouldn't recommend you to put the front house key door under your front door mat, we're not going to have you want to reuse the same passwords that were compromised before, or use a weak password. Your online accounts should be set up so only you can get access to them, as well as the information that you're sharing online shouldn't be able to tie into getting someone to be able to get access to your online accounts. And the last, use up-to-date security software. Using up-to-date apps, software makes you less of a vulnerable user online. And if you're using outdated software, usually those are more susceptible to loopholes being in the software for the wrong person to be able to access it. Overall, these are just a few of our recommended best practices when dealing with cyber harassment. And we're going to now go through some scenarios with our panel speakers, leading us through them and being able to share with us how they would best deal with it. Starting with scenario 1, we're going to have Chris Henderson, the Director of Compliance and Title IX Coordinator, walk us through that one. And I'm going to have her take it from here.
Wonderful. Thanks so much. So in our first scenario, someone shares an inappropriate picture of you without your consent on social media. Who might you first reach out to report the situation? I think I would actually like to start the answer to that question with, first of all, make sure you report it. Please report it to someone. Oftentimes, individuals don't know if it's a violation of a policy or not, or even who to talk to. It's okay not to know what policy, if any, it violates. Report it anyway. Sometimes folks are afraid to report it as they think the situation could get worse if they do report. We often find not reporting leads to further posting and additional behavior. There are lots of options for reporting. If you feel comfortable talking to your RA or your dean, if you're a student, you can. They are mandatory reporters who will reach out to Title IX office, and we will then reach out to you. Or you could call us directly. We have several policies along with the standards of student conduct that apply here for students. The policy on preventing and responding to discrimination and harassment against students prohibits unwelcome conduct directed against an individual based on that individual's protected status. That is sufficiently severe or pervasive that it limits or denies an individual's employment, academic performance, or ability to participate in or benefit from university programs or activities. Protected status includes your race, religion, national ethnic origin, age, sex, sexual orientation, gender identity, gender expression, disability, or status as a veteran. Depending on the post, the behavior could violate our policy prohibiting sexual misconduct. That policy prohibits sexual harassment, which is conduct that is sexual in nature, directed at an individual that is pervasive and severe and objectively offensive. That same policy also prohibits sexual exploitation, which is defined as taking advantage of another person without effective consent. Again, the inappropriate post could be any of those. But please don't get too hung up on determining if the behavior violates a policy or what policy it is. That's our job. Even if a policy is not violated, bad behavior needs to and will be addressed. The bottom line is to report the behavior. We will reach out and walk you through options and provide you with support as we work through the situation.
Great, thank you, Chris. Really great information. Next, we are going to have scenario 2 answered by Eric Major-Beatty with UR Police Department.
Excellent. Thank you, everyone. So the prompt is, you receive unwanted threatening messages. The messages continue over several days. How would you best address the consistent threatening messages, and who would you report it to? URPD sees this situation a few times each semester on campus. The incidents that are reported to us are generally either a direct threat, which is fairly infrequent, or an indirect threat, which we see a little bit more commonly. If someone sends you a direct threat and says, I'm going to break your legs or I'm going to kill you, for example, these are direct threats and a violation of Virginia Criminal Code titled Threats of Death or Bodily Harm to a Person. Fortunately, this is one of the state codes that Virginia has amended to keep up with current technology, and it includes not only direct verbal threats, but also transmitted communications, which would include an email, text, or other electronic message. Now, the catch is that the threat has to place such person in a reasonable apprehension of death or bodily injury. If they do that, this is a Class 6 felony. Now, if the threat to cause death or bodily harm is sent with the intent to intimidate a population at large or influence activities, and kind of think about like causing a mass evacuation of a building, canceling a sporting event or something like that, that person would actually be committing a Class 5 felony. Prosecution of these threats can either be in the place the communication was made or received. So for URPD to charge someone with sending one of these threats, we have to also show that the victim was on campus. If the victim's off campus when they received the threat and the threat was made from someone off campus, you would need to contact that jurisdiction that you're in. But with that said, URPD is more than happy to assist and walk somebody through that process and kind of act as a liaison between a university community member and the local jurisdiction that they might have to work with. Lastly, if there's no threat to cause death or bodily harm, we can also look at charging someone with harassment by computer. This includes any use of a computer or computer network to communicate vulgar, profane, lewd, or indecent language to coerce, intimidate, or harass a person, and that's a Class 1 misdemeanor. This is a really powerful code section for a university. As wired as we are on campus, there's so much communication happening over electronic means. If you're being harassed by email, text, or another like electronic messaging type of deal, we just have to prove that there was intent to coerce, intimidate, or harass the victim. So even if there's not a threat of death or bodily harm, we can also look at that section for criminal action. And lastly, this type of harassment and threatening behavior can develop quickly and really have significant impacts on an individual's life. I would highly recommend reaching out to URPD early. Even if the victim doesn't want to prosecute, URPD can document the incident and do some investigating behind the scenes to assess the level of threat present. There are also several campus resources, some of them here today, we can refer the victim to on campus to ensure that they're aware of the support available to them. Having that initial police report, though, with these harassment incidents is really valuable, even when the threats seem minor. We never know what these situations will develop into over time.
Thank you, Eric. That was really helpful and really insightful. So next we're going to go through scenario 3 with Kaylin Tingle, our Healthy Relationships and Violence Prevention Educator.
Thanks. So in scenario 3, you get a private message shared to you with an explicit photo of a classmate sent from another person who makes a joke about it. What would you do? So in this scenario, we're a bystander of a situation, and so we can choose to be either an active bystander or a passive bystander. And as our students are familiar with, there's lots of different options to intervene in situations, and we can remember those through the 6 Ds of bystander intervention. So the 6 Ds are direct, distract, delegate, delay, document, and defend. So to address the situation directly, we could do that with the person who's potentially doing the harm. So maybe reaching out directly if we know who took the picture originally, directly addressing it with the person who shared the picture with us and made the joke about it, or directly addressing it with the person who is potentially harmed or who the picture is taken up in this situation. And a lot of times when we think of direct, we might think of being confrontational or sort of calling someone out. And if that's how we're comfortable communicating, that's wonderful, but it doesn't have to be a confrontational thing. We can say like, hey, that's not okay, this is messed up. Or we can do so by asking a question, right? Of like, did you have consent to share that picture? Asking some follow-up questions. We don't have to necessarily be confrontational. We can communicate directly in the way that feels most comfortable to us. Distract might be challenging in this situation because distract we typically use to kind of break up a situation, to be able to intervene in another way or to de-escalate the situation. And so if this person is sharing something directly with us, we don't want to distract or just like change the subject and just gloss over it without being able to intervene. But distract could be helpful in a situation, say, if somebody posts something in a public forum, like a group chat or some sort of social media platform, maybe we could drown out the post by posting a lot of other things so that it's not as visible and it gives us some time to be able to intervene potentially in a different way, like by reporting or directly addressing the incident. Delegate is similar to what folks have already shared before. So we could delegate by reporting to a resource on campus or off campus, like URPD or Title IX, or to an RA or a local police jurisdiction. But we could also think about how we can delegate maybe to friends of the people who are impacted in this situation. Maybe we don't know the people as closely, and we might know some folks that can maybe directly intervene a little bit more effectively, maybe if they have a better relationship with that person. With delay, that gives us permission to intervene if maybe we don't have the tools or skills or ability to do so in the moment. Maybe we are just completely caught off guard. Maybe it doesn't feel safe to do so. Maybe we just didn't know what to do in the moment or the moment passed. But that doesn't mean we can't come back to a situation and follow up later. So delay gives us that permission of like, oh my gosh, I didn't know what to do. I didn't say anything, but we can always go back to that person who shared the picture. We can check in with the potential victim at a later time, or the potential person doing the harm, and intervene at a later time or date. Defend is the one that helps us to really build a culture of intervention, right? It can be really hard to be that person to say something when we see something that is inappropriate or harassment or violence. It can be challenging to be that first person to speak up, to challenge the status quo, to speak out. And so when we see somebody who has, or we witness somebody who has intervened, being able to have that person's back, whether that's following up and sort of supporting their intervention, using another D of intervention, or just telling them, hey, thank you for saying something. Thank you for doing something in that situation. And finally, document, again, if it doesn't feel safe to do so, we're not sure what to do, we can choose to, if we feel comfortable to do so, potentially document the situation. Of course, we wouldn't want to do so in a way that perpetuates that image or that harassment being shared more broadly. We'd want to do so really mindfully and intentionally, and perhaps be able to check in with the victim or survivor in this situation and say, hey, I took a screenshot of this. What would you like to do with it? Or be able to use that documentation to report at a later time as well. Now, if you find yourself in these situations, you might also feel that you are impacted by this because maybe you haven't experienced some violence or harassment in the past. And so whether we're sharing with the people that are harmed in this situation, or we're seeking out resources for ourselves, there's several confidential resources on campus that can help support people who are impacted by violence. Again, whether that's the person directly impacted because they experienced it, the person who is exhibiting harmful behaviors, or members of the community who are friends or loved ones, or just witnesses of a particular incident. They can reach out to these confidential resources like our PSMAs, our peer sexual misconduct advisors, or our care advocates, who I work very closely with. So our PSMAs are undergraduate students who are confidential. They serve 24/7 while classes are in session. So students can reach out to them via their email or text them or call them on their phone to receive additional confidential support. Maybe if they just want to understand what their options are, maybe if they just need a listening ear, or maybe if they want to understand how to go about reporting or have somebody to support them through certain steps of that process. Similarly, our care advocates are also confidential. They're here year round while the university is open, so over summer breaks and such, and respond within one business day. And our members from our local sexual and domestic violence agency, Safe Harbor, and graduate students who are working towards their Masters of Social Work at VCU. And of course, CAPS is a great resource to receive ongoing support, particularly around mental health things that might be coming up, or trauma for people who have been impacted, again, at any sort of intersection of this kind of a scenario, as well as some local hotlines that folks can call and access 24/7 based on sort of what they're going through and what sort of support they need. All of these resources can also provide safety planning for folks, similar to also URPD can provide some safety planning if folks are trying to think through how they can take some risk reduction steps while they're navigating these process or these kinds of to help try to manage and control their actions to be able to minimize their risk a little bit in these situations.
Awesome. Thank you, Kaylin. That was really helpful. And as you can see, we added additional resources on this scenario because this was definitely a much more layered scenario that kind of really involves some of the care resources. So we're going to now go right into our Q&A. We should mention at the beginning that if you had any questions, or if you have any questions right now, feel free to drop them in the Q&A and John's going to read them. And we'll answer some of those. We also have prepared some questions as well, so we can, have the panel speakers give us additional kind of perspectives on some of these questions we have. And last, this QR code, if you scan it, this will take you to our cyber harassment site, where our cyber harassment website, where we have additional resources to continue the conversation. That will also be where you can find this recording. So if you wanted to share it with other people in the UR community and you come to the website, you'll have resources as well as this webinar to kind of share just how UR is dealing with cyber harassment on campus. So now I'm going to give it to John to take it from here.
Thank you, Svetla. I appreciate it. So the first question, and as Svetla pointed out, please, if you have a question or comment, put that in the Q&A panel of the webinar. But the first question for the panelists are, what is the most common form of cyber harassment we see reported at University of Richmond?
I'll take the first stab at it, and Eric, you probably can chime in as well. But from a Title IX perspective, we do see a number of reports regarding stalking or exploitation, sexual exploitation, that get reported quite a bit. Harassment, general harassment, somewhat, but probably more on the stalking or the sexual exploitation, which is basically using, taking advantage of another person without their effective consent. And Eric, you probably have a better sense of what gets reported to the police.
Yeah, no, I agree. We deal with a lot of stalking stuff going on online at the victim level, and then also incidents where students will transfer money. They'll be having some type of mutually consensual interaction with somebody online. the other person records it and then comes back the next day demanding money and things like that. And that's just one of those cases you really need to be aware of who you're interacting with online, and protecting your information and things like that. And lastly, there's also, like, outside of the individual, you also have the university, who sometimes stuff gets posted about the university and things like that. So we're frequently looking at situations like that as well, on like social media and things.
Great, thank you both. Follow-up question to that a little is, so if someone does report cyber harassment, how long does it typically take for you to get back with someone once they've submitted the report?
If a report comes to the Title IX office, we will reach out to them within 1 business day. Important to remember that if it happens over the weekends, we are not a 24/7 operation. And certainly for any type of an emergency, you would reach out to the university police, who are here 24/7. But for, at least from the Title IX office, it's 1 business day.
And we're going to be here 24/7. So if you call us to report some type of harassment, we'll be there within probably 2 or 3 minutes. We'll take that initial report, and then most of these cases you'll end up getting assigned to a detective, somebody who has a lot more knowledge on the back end of the computers and IP addresses and things like that. So then the detective will follow up after that initial report the following days, weeks, month, however long it takes to track this, especially in stalking cases. Stalking sometimes can last over months, years, really.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Great, thank you. A little bit more technology focused. The next question is, I've been the victim of cyber harassment and have malicious false information posted about me online. What can I do to get this taken down? And this is a question that I know that we've been asked in informational security several times, so I'll be happy to field this question. So the first thing you want to do is review your the laws around privacy and cyber harassment in your location. So if you're in Europe, if you're based in Europe or in that locality, you have things such as the GDPR, and each nation generally has their own set of privacy and cyber harassment laws. And in the United States, we are seeing more states that are enacting very comprehensive privacy legislation that comes into effect. Virginia is one of those states that recently enacted that law, but we also have California, Connecticut, Colorado, and Utah also are doing that. So you can also reach out to the site to have the information removed. That's really a step one after you understand what your recourse is from a legal standpoint. Is you can reach out to the site to have the information removed. You could also reach out to some of these submit a de-indexing request to the search providers like Google and Bing, and that when you submit that request, they can make sure that the data is removed from search results. At least you can attempt to. Now that it can always reappear, but that is a good step to take. The next thing you can do is engage a data removal or reputational management service. There are quite a few of those out there. I'm not going to recommend anyone because there are some good ones. There's some ones that aren't so good. But if you want that, definitely reach out to the information security team and we can help you and maybe give you some recommendations around that. But what these people will do is they will work with websites, data brokers, search engines to help remove your data for you. It takes a lot of the work off of your shoulders. And you can it does cost money, but they take care of the heavy lifting for you. In some cases, you may be able to file a Digital Millennium Copyright Act takedown request, a DMCA takedown request. It depends on the sort of data that is being posted out there, but if that's applicable, that is a good recourse as well. And then lastly, of course, you may need to take legal action, and that would, of course, be where you would want to potentially contact the police department, the Richmond PD, or you could contact a lawyer and have them take up the case for you. So those are some of the resources out there for you. It's not an easy task to have yourself removed from the internet because, as the old saying goes, once it's on the internet, it's there forever. It can be difficult to remove, but there are ways that you can make your information less readily available to anyone out there that's searching for it. So the next question out there is, what do you recommend to doing to help a victim recover from cyber harassment?
I'll take that one. We do have a lot of support. Kaylin was talking a lot about her, about the CARES support resources, and they're wonderful resources that are out there. Also, Title IX office can provide some support and other supportive measures or accommodations that might be necessary as the person is going through it. I'm assuming the question, John, is less to do with how do I take it down as opposed to how do I deal with this emotionally. So I would say that once it's reported, the vast majority of the folks that we talk to, well, a large number, let me put it that way, don't necessarily want to go through a formal process, but do want to avail themselves of some supportive measures and some help, which we can do. And then Kaylin, I think you maybe want to speak a little bit to the resources that are available as well, both on campus and off campus.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Chris. I think it's also important to remember that most often people turn to the people that they know before they maybe engage in sort of formal systems, whether that's reporting or going to advocates like PSMAs or to counseling. So really, I like to think of us as a community of first responders. And the most important thing that you can do if somebody comes to you and they share that something like this has happened to them is to first believe them. That's really the most important thing in sort of their moving forward in their healing journey. So believing them first and foremost, thanking them for sharing with you. It takes a lot of courage for them to disclose that to you. And being able to, when somebody has something like this happen to them, that's their ability to make choices about, maybe pictures of them or their content or whatever, or their physical safety. Those choices have been taken away from them. So being able to share the resources like we've talked about, whether that's reporting to URPD, reporting to Title IX, and going through some sort of formal process or not going through a formal process just to receive accommodations or supportive measures, or sharing those confidential resources that we shared on the slide, but not necessarily making that decision for them, but sharing like, here's a lot of different resources. How might you want to move forward in this situation? I often talk with our PSMAs when we're in training and our care advocates of thinking of it being like a GPS, right? We can offer all of these options to people who have been impacted by violence or harassment, and allowing them to make the choice of, I want to go to, this particular Kroger, but I want to avoid tolls, or I want to take the scenic route. And so being able to share those options and resources and help alongside the way of how they want to move forward in that process.
Great, thank you. Thank you very much, Kaylin. Great information. Last question that I have here is, are there any applications you recommend for protecting your identity online? Stella, do you have anything you want to share with us on that?
Yes, actually I have a couple applications and some tips to best answer that. So first, I would say use a VPN. Being on an encrypted network, it makes it harder for someone to know what you're doing and who you are when you're doing your business, especially if you're accessing sensitive information like your financial accounts or your healthcare accounts. Next, I would say use a quality antivirus software. This will minimize the chance that malware is downloaded. There's malware that is out there that will just sit on your computer and it's just gonna like capture what you're sharing online. So using a quality antivirus software just kind of makes sure like junk isn't getting brought onto your system. Next is, especially for the identity piece, use anonymous search engines. I'm not sure you guys have heard of DuckDuckGo, but they're a browser along with a couple of others that do not track your search history. They don't actually collect it. They don't save it. And they even block ad trackers. So if you ever, when you go check out on something on Amazon and then all of a sudden it just seems like you keep seeing that same ad for whatever you were looking at, that browser will prevent those ads like following you. And then another application would be use an MFA, a multi-factor authentication app. This will ensure, especially with your online accounts, especially financials, healthcare, something that's important to you that this will ensure that there's a layer of additional authentication. So it's gonna, ensure that whoever has access to that account can actually be verified, that they say who they are and they have the ability to verify them, usually with a notification on your phone.
So can I make one comment on that with using the MFA? That's a great tool too for your social media accounts. I'm sure many of us have seen people with Facebook posts, my account has been hacked, and things have been posted and they have to go in and change their password and things like that. Most of the social media platforms do have multi-factor enabled, and that is a great tool that you can use to prevent that from happening. Sorry, Svella, I just wanted to point that out.
I like that additional, MFA has a lot, it's like a Swiss Army knife. It can do a lot. And then overall, just as we said throughout the presentation, be aware what you're sharing to public sites. It's hard to get it down. Double check your privacy settings. Make sure you know like who has access to what you share, and understand what accounts are important to you so you can prioritize how you best want to manage them. Most of us have our whole lives online and it's kind of hard to manage it all, but if you know your top 3 that you don't want messed with, it might be easier to like manage those 3 at the very least, and then maintain the rest as best as you can.
Great. Well, thank you. I would like to extend my extreme thanks to our panelists. You all have been wonderful in your knowledge. Thank you for taking the time today to share that with the university. We really appreciate that. And hopefully everyone has gotten a little bit of information that they can take back with them to both protect themselves against cyber harassment. Maybe you can share it with your teammates, and they can be a little bit safer online as well. So if you have any questions or comments, don't hesitate to reach out to the information security team here at the University of Richmond. Our email address is very easy. It is infosec@richmond.edu, and reach out to us if you have any questions. Thank you very much.
Thank you, everyone, and enjoy the rest of your afternoon. I'm going to end the recording right now. All right, stop.